Hello, everybody. Welcome to One Way Conversations. Schizo here with Brett Miller. He's a retired school teacher and author of a science fiction romance novel entitled Lifeline Origins. It's his first novel into gay science fiction series. He wants to talk about how, his novel, he's here to talk about his novel, his life experience as a gay man who led to him writing this book. He also wants to share about his life experiences growing up gay and how life experiences led to him writing this book. Well, welcome, Grant. Glad that you're here.
Wonderful. And again, Skid, thank you for inviting me. It's an incredible experience to actually reach out and talk about some of the experiences I've had getting this novel published and some of the things that led up to the actual publication of it.
So it sounds like it's been a long journey for you from what we talked a little bit before this. So it seems like it's been a long journey for you in your life, going through all the things you've been through, and that got you to write your first novel.
Well, sometimes you have to start at the beginning. And when you're talking about how I grew up, for example, how did that affect me in my life and how that led me to actually writing the book, I think some of the stories are important because a lot of the things that happen to the characters in the novel are from my own experience. And sometimes me as a person is actually kind of inside the character themselves. So my life experiences are the reason that I felt so comfortable writing the book.
Okay. Well, you go back you through your life. When did you first realize you were gay?
That is a great question. When I was 5 years old and I started going to kindergarten, I knew that I was different. I had no real indication of what that actually was. There was just a sense that I was somehow different. It was a feeling. And it was, as I got older and older, words started appearing. You'd hear them on the playground or you'd hear things on the news and things like that. And then it's kind of, okay, here's a thing. I must be a quote homosexual because I'm attracted to boys. That kind of
Okay.
started, I would say maybe 9 or 10 when I kind of realized, I think I might actually be more interested in boys, which was not easy, especially in the 60s, 70s. So,
Well, so what year were you born then?
62.
62. So you realized just as it was turning what to the 70s, is that when you learned about yourself a little bit more or understood you were different?
Right.
Or was it more in the 60s?
Yeah, it was about 68 because that's about 5 years. Yeah, I was in kindergarten at that point, and that's when I came off the farm where I lived and then started, you know, going to school with other children. So it was a big change, and it was there realizing, gee, I don't feel like the others for some reason. And if you were to ask me, Skit, what was the feeling? It was just a gut instinct. There's something about me that was different, and I didn't
Did
figure on
go,
it until
go, go.
much later.
So okay, so you started to feel more and more, you said around 9 or 10, which was the 70s by then, right? What was the difference feeling from 5 to 9 or 10 that you noticed that was stronger or different? Or more settling of what you really feel.
Well, I would draw a parallel to anyone who's going through it as someone who discovers that they're heterosexual, for example. I mean, for them, it's just a natural progression, right? That they start to think, I'm kind of interested in girls now. They're not, the enemy, like kids,
Oh, you
guys.
mean okay? Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So for me, it was that knowing that, oh, okay, I'm actually kind of interested in the other guys, but that was the catch-22 for me because on the other side of the coin, I knew that this wasn't something that was accepted by society in general. And in fact, it discouraged to even broach the subject.
Was it that young of was 9 or 10 back then? Even that young, gay was considered very bad because I thought at one point gay meant a completely different meant happy, didn't it? At one point before it meant so by then when you were 9 or 10, had it had already switched to
As a young child in the early 70s, I had no concept of the word gay. Really, it wasn't until maybe the late 70s when I was in my adolescence and I started hearing that term. I'd like to point out that, the word homosexual is a very clinical term. Just as the clinical term of a heterosexual. Um, for me as a gay man, I understand the clinical term homosexual because I'm attracted to men. But at the same time, I prefer the word gay or queer for that matter, because yeah, I'm a man who has sex with men, but I'm more than that. There's a lot more to me than just being a sexual being. So I think that's one of the reasons why, as a gay man, I prefer the word gay. So
Okay. Okay. Have you heard that often from other gay men, or is that never really talked about amongst the LGBT community?
I think, from my standpoint, I think it was just a word that was suddenly appeared, and it was the one that I felt comfortable with in my own mind, of course. It's good.
Okay.
I wasn't, throughout high school, I was so much in the closet that anything I could do to make myself smaller and unnoticeable would be something that I would want to achieve. And unfortunately, there was an incident where one of the other boys caught on that, hey, he might be different. And starting in grade 7 up until about grade 12, I was harassed.
Okay.
You know, tormented. I was teased. I was physically pushed around because someone figured, oh, this boy is different. I think he must be gay. And of course, they wouldn't use that term. They'd use the F word. But they just somehow knew themselves. And then, of course, I became the target. And for most of my high school time, I hated school, which I loved beforehand, by the way. It wasn't until I was basically bullied to the point that, yeah, as I go back there, I can almost sort of feel and see the images in my head of how I was dealing with that sexuality. So you have to understand, Kit, when a person is trying to deal with their sexuality and they haven't come to accept themselves, but yet they know that they feel this way, they're conflicted back and forth. Then hearing society keep a bunch of stuff on them, we got the religion aspect, the fact that I'm different, all those things. It's a big process, and it can be quite traumatic.
Yeah, so, well, what now with some gay men, there are very mannerisms that have more prominence in some gay men than others. Would you say that to be true?
Well, of course. I mean, remember, there are stereotypes as also. I mean, as a gay man, I'm not overly effeminate. I'm in touch with my feminine feelings.
Yeah.
But, I'm asked, what are your pronouns? I'm he, him. And I exhibit a lot more masculine characteristics than I do feminine. But I have them inside because I'm also a highly sensitive person.
With school, was there a certain were you showing certain things where people thought that, or was it just for some reason you made a comment and they just took it from there? Was that what happened for you with bullying and stuff?
I think it started off with I hated team sports. Like,
Okay.
I hated. I actually like baseball, so I'll stand corrected there. But in general, I hated team sports and
Playing them or watching them?
playing them.
Playing. Okay.
And so around grade 4 or 5, I started feeling more comfortable hanging out with the girls. So I learned how to double dutch on a jump rope. I learned how to play balls against the wall. Where you throw a ball and
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
all this stuff because girls were easier to get along with and they seemed to like me and therefore didn't exclude me. Whereas when I was pushed into a soccer game in PE, it was a nightmare for me. So I think probably they noticed, these bullies noticed that, well, here's a boy who likes to hang out with girls. He plays ball games. He skips rope, all that stuff. Let's use him as a target.
Okay. Now, do you think not only after at some point they realized you were gay, but also were jealous of the fact that you were hanging out with girls? Before they realized you were gay,
7.
certain things you would say or do, maybe I could be wrong.
To the point, I mean, I think mannerisms can kind of be, children are actually really good at reading body language. For example, I would always avert my eyes. I wouldn't look a person in the eye. Um, I would smile when somebody would actually address me, but the girls were much more comfortable to look at, talk to them, be with them. And, to your point earlier about guys being kind of like, how do you do this, Grant? I actually had a couple of my high school friends say, Grant, you really have no problem meeting girls. What is it? I said, I have no clue. In my heart, I knew. This is because I don't think I was a threat to them, and they kind of sensed that.
Yeah.
So,
Were you ever by any of those girls that you played those or whatever? Were you ever approached in a I like you sort of way? Was that ever happen?
well, I mean, in grade 2, Sandra asked me if I would marry her, and I said yes, but that was grade 2.
And you highly doubted that would ever happen.
Well, you know what? In grade
But
2,
you had to tell her at some point, right? You couldn't just, you couldn't let it last like that forever. So at some point you were going to have to tell her.
well,
Yeah.
anyway, I think she went on 2 days later and asked someone else to marry her. So who knows? I mean,
Yeah,
I
well,
had a-
that's how
I
that's
mean,
how it is in those grades.
I mean, in grade 5, I had a quasi girlfriend. I mean, there was really nothing there, but I mean, she wanted to plan out how many kids we were going to have and all that stuff, and I went with it. But at that point, I was thinking, oh, okay, whatever. But I mean, there wasn't really any.
Okay.
Well, in grade 5, as a matter of fact, I had a quasi girlfriend. We agreed to, be boyfriend girlfriend. But I mean, even in grade 5, you didn't really know what that actually meant. For me, girlfriend meant somebody I could hang out with and have fun with, and had nothing to
Okay.
do about dating. It wasn't until later that those ideas kind of changed, and at that point, I avoided any potential connections with girls out of fear, not for myself, but for them. That I didn't
Oh,
want to.
like them not realizing, hey, how could you not know that type of thing? Is that what you're afraid of too for them? Like them being called stupid or them not
No,
figure it out? Was that
not at
it?
all. No, not at all. I think it was a decision, unconscious one at that of me thinking, you know what? I know I'm different. I think I am gay. I don't want to hurt this girl.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so at that point, I just kind of avoided it. So if it ever came up, I just kind of deflected it. So
So
yeah.
now, so you said mannerisms was the thing. It was the double dutch and all that. Did you
Yeah.
see that as the reason why they noticed, or that did that happen also in high school? That same thing, or did it change over
Well,
time? Is what they would notice?
well, it started in middle school, and it was the specific thing. I think that was really the catalyst was having to change in PE. And I think one day I was curious, and of course my eyes were reverted to a guy, getting dressed. And of course,
Okay.
being curious at that age, he noticed. And at that point, that's when a lot of the teasing started, because I think he realized, oh, this guy likes is
And how old were you at that point?
uh I would say 12.
Now, see, with stuff like that, people will say someone else is gay because they look, they're not look, but they turn it. It just happened. That does happen. So now, did you think that it was? So at first, you didn't think that it was just like other boys or kids were just making fun of you because you accidentally saw, even though you said you were curious, but did it? Do you think they actually at first may have thought that you just looking at was it just making fun of you, or did you think that it was because they could tell like certain things about you that were predominantly gay?
Well, I think it's a combination of it all. The fact that I played with girls and we learned double dutch, and they caught me accidentally looking at them. And that particular boy, when we went to high school, was the catalyst that started the rest of the boys from the other towns when we moved to the high school. And all of a sudden, I had a gang of 10 guys harassing me.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
yeah,
at that point,
yeah.
I'm in high school. I'm faced in a large school after being in a small school. So it was a big environment. It was scary as hell. So here I am trying to make friends, but being careful. And focus on my studies. And that was basically a safe place for me. Was the more I studied, the safer I would be. So,
well, now I do have a question now, though.
okay, go
Did
for it.
did any of the people that made fun of you come out as gay?
Good question. I've always questioned that because again, I never went to my high school reunion, so I never found
Oh,
out.
okay.
I mean, sometimes, especially adults that tend to be rather homophobic and are really, the ones that really go after a gay person, sometimes can have, could be potentially in the closet or fighting their own sexuality and haven't come to terms with it. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there could have been one or two. By the way, all my other friends, when they found out that I was gay, they asked me, "Why didn't you tell us?" And I said to them, "Look, this was late 70s. It wasn't something that you talked about. It wasn't something that I had actually accepted myself at that point. All I knew was that I was being terrorized by this group of guys, and all my other friends had no idea it was going on. The bullies, they hit it so
But
well, and I hit it so well too, that nobody, even my parents, my
how,
friends,
how many friends did you have other than like other than the kids dealing like you were dealing with with them?
yeah.
How many friends did you have? How many would you count if you
Well,
had to?
I went one, two, three guys and at least six girls. And one of the guys, by the way, was the captain of the football team. And for some reason, we developed a friendship, and it was never an issue. It's just
So he never knew they were doing any of that?
no, no. You know what? If he had, he probably would have gone in there and beaten the out of him. If he'd known.
It's unfortunate that they didn't just accidentally happen upon it. You know what I mean? Like if they would have happened upon it, they would at least, even though they couldn't do anything because of the time,
Yeah.
they could actually you could actually have people that know and are there for you when if something happens, or at least trying to get you out of a situation. You know what I mean? Like if they see them around, oh hey Grant, come over here, we gotta go. You know what I mean? Like kind of get you out of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't accidentally happen upon it.
No.
Even though you were afraid to tell them, it's just unfortunate they have it accidentally upon it and go, okay, this is going on. All right, we gotta help. Yeah, we gotta get you away from this. So if we see them or we see, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's what my friend said years later. If I had only known Grant, I would have been there to help you. And I asked the question, if you had known back then that I was gay, you wouldn't have had a problem with it. And they all said no. See, that's the thing. I mean, as a in the closet gay teenager, I didn't see the possibility of anyone understanding that because I myself hadn't come to accept it. I mean, literally, I had to run away from home to come out. So once I finished school, I was gone. And
So it's kind of like the like kids that get abused. They don't tell anyone. They get abused at home. They don't tell anyone because they don't think anyone would believe them or help them. Or is that kind of the same thing?
well, there's parallels to that. I mean, I can remember telling my mom, I said, I don't have a very good self-esteem. And she said, "Oh, Grant, there's really nothing wrong with you. It's just something that you're feeling."
What,
And
gay or just self-esteem?
self-esteem. I mean,
Okay.
I mean that's I was pretty in tune with what was going on in the words, and I was really good at school up until the point that I was getting bullied. So I kind of lost my train of thought there, but my feelings around being gay were a turmoil for me. So for me, I had to find a way to get away from my parents because there were always indications, and they weren't really verbal. They were just the feelings, the impressions, that my parents wouldn't accept me. And I can give you a classic example where our family was watching a news television show that came from the States somewhere, and the guy was interviewing a bunch of gay men. And my mother said, just off the cuff, I don't know why God created people like that. And here I am, a young gay kid struggling with his sexuality, hearing that and taking it on. And so when I said I don't have a very high self-esteem, it's because there was no role model for me. There was no one to help me through all that situation. And I think if you ask a lot of gay people of my age, there really was no role model to follow. And so we had to strike out on our own and make it ourselves.
Yeah, because there was probably a lot of hiding back then.
Oh my God.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when I ran away and came out to myself and to my new friends, um, others around me at work, forget it. I had a job at that point. Um, so most of my friends that were all gay, so there was no real concern for me.
Well, when go ahead. When you told now the friends that you told that you were talking about before were not gay, none of them were gay or lesbian, right? Those were,
No,
how did it? Were they the first ones you told you were gay? Were they the first friends you told?
uh, they were the first ones from school, yes, but that was
So,
after my parents and all that stuff. So it was after the fact.
so
So
you told your parents first.
actually, no, they came to the city where I was living, and my mother basically sat me down in the park and said, "So we want to know, are you gay?" So I just sat there and said, "Yeah," and
How
we
did when you heard the question, what was going through your mind or your body when you were asked that question by your mother at that time?
a combination of sense of relief and a sense of great fear, like what is going to happen with this. In that situation, my mother and I, we talked about it. And then she went home saying, okay, well, we love you, all that stuff. But then not emails, mail started arriving. We're talking the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Um, oh, well, we're never going to hear wedding bells for you. We're not going to have grandchildren from you and all that stuff. And when that started, I just basically wrote a note back to my mother and father and said, look, if you're not going to accept me for who I am, I'm done. And I said, I'm done. And for about a month, they didn't really send any messages to me. And then all of a sudden they started emailing, hi, how are you doing? And all that stuff. And over time, they came to accept it. And in fact, my first major boyfriend, I actually took him home to meet my parents. And they really
So
welcomed me with open
so
arms.
they were okay with you being gay. They never at first it was probably a shock,
Yeah.
of course, but they weren't like, angry or wanted to teach you that you shouldn't be like there was none of that.
No, I was very fortunate in the sense that they didn't abandon me. I mean,
Okay.
even today, there are still, kids from my community that are being basically kicked out of house. I was reading something on the news here in Canada that in Nova Scotia and Halifax, that the incidence of homelessness is much more prevalent in my community because these young kids are getting booted out of their house even today. So yeah, no, my parents, I consider myself lucky. They came along. I mean, they were pretty naive at first. They were really unsure, but eventually they caught on, and I kind of pushed it. I think eventually, as I got older and realized, uh, I, this is me. This is how I want to be. You either got to accept me or not. And they came to accept me into their best ability, and I think that was the key there. So
Were you surprised that she asked?
no, I think in my heart I knew she was asking. I think she knew. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
At what point, thinking back through your childhood or growing up, where you thought like she said something or mentioned something to see your reaction? Do you think that ever happened? That you didn't notice, or like if you think back, you're like, you know what? There was this one time where she said a specific thing and looked at you.
No, that was the thing. My father and mother, being European, were very, let's sweep everything under the rug. Let's not talk about it. So whatever conversation they had was between them. And I think one of the times when I told my parents that I was moving and well, basically running away at 17 because I was underage, I said, I found some roommates. And the thing that came out of my father was, well, I hope to God that they're straight. And this is before my mother came. And I just pushed it off, didn't answer it. And then afterwards, my mother flew to the city I was in and then asked me. So I suspect they knew based on
they were trying to see, or did you think they were, when he said, hopefully they're straight, that he
Yeah.
was trying to see what you would say?
Well, I think that was in denial on whether, oh my God, my son might be gay. Let's just hope that no, he's not. Maybe there's something we can do from preventing him to become gay, which of course you can't.
Now, when it comes to, people being gay, do you understand the concept of a mother wanting to see their daughter or son have kids and children and have their daughter become pregnant like that? Do you think that's when that happened, when she said that or something, do you think it was more of her dream of wanting that rather than her dismissing you being gay? It was more a dream of a parent for their kid and their grandkids and all that?
That's a good question, and I can't really answer that. I mean, I know for a fact I'm the second oldest of my family, and my older brother has kids. My younger brother has kids too, so they fulfilled that dream for my parents. So, and so for me, I think it was they didn't want me
If
to
they
be.
had dream for all their kids, and they had the same dream for all of you.
Probably, yeah. That's the thing. I mean, as a gay man, I didn't fit into that, or a gay child, I didn't fit into that model, and that was why I needed to get out of there.
Well, it was a while before you could adopt, before it was allowed, right? It
Yeah,
was like years and years, right?
yeah.
Second. So was the high school stuff the scariest thing you had to deal with when it came to any homophobia or anything like that? No.
Well, there's a combination of things. I mean, even the teachers in high school were rather homophobic. Um, I think the homophobia became a little bit more apparent and scary for me living in a city um, that was rather homophobic in general. And I mean, that being walk down the street with friends and have women scream faggot at you,
Uh,
that's pretty apparent that they're judging you based on what you look. So,
uh,
those
so
instances,
something I brought up to you before, could you understand the concept of somebody saying that if it's not bad, why are you hiding it? Not in a way of being mean or anything, but like for anything else, you know what I mean? If you're sneaking out and it's not bad that you're sneaking out of the house, why are you hiding it for you? Like that type of like wonder, like why won't you just tell me? You
Mhm.
get what I'm saying? Like
Oh, by
just
all
tell me
means.
what's going on. You know what I mean? Like just tell me, okay, if it's not bad, just tell me. I just want to know what's going on. Can you understand that concept of it? Not in a
Of course.
negative way, but in a positive way?
Mhm. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I think there's a lot of gay people out there that actually had that experience where, please just tell us. And by the way, it's a difficult procedure to come out. It takes a lot of work and a lot of guts to actually do it. And for some people, they never do. But for me, um, it took me, step one was A, accept myself, and then B, start letting my family into what I was doing. So um, they never said, well, why didn't you come to us beforehand? They just worked it into the situation. So, but I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that, well, why didn't you tell us before? Well, there were reasons for not telling. There was fear. There was concern about being discriminated against, to be kicked out of your house, all that sort of thing. So it depends on each person. And, by the way, I moved to Calgary, Alberta, which is a fairly, well, it's kind of like the Texas of Canada, right? So being
Okay.
in that city in the early 80s was not easy. I mean, there was a gay community, but that's where I stayed. I didn't try to venture out of it other than for work. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So when where you said it, where was it? You said Alberta. Alberta. Which one did you say you went to?
Calgary.
Calgary. Calgary. Um, in Calgary, was there like a specific area that gay people moved to?
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
There was.
so anybody who lived in that area were considered gay.
Well, I mean, it was quite mixed, Skid. I mean, but in general, you knew in this particular neighborhood there was a high volume of gay people. But I don't think it was ever announced to, to the general public. It just was kind of known as that way. So, yeah.
Okay. 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 Now, what what do you think was the big thing that changed how gay people were seen, gay women, gay men, everything. What was that moment where people were like, you know what, there's it's really bad for them. Like, what do you think was the opening thing to where a mind opening thing or something like that?
Well, I think it was a gradual process. I mean, we're still not there even today. I mean, um, for example, let's talk Canada here. In 1969, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, our prime minister at the time, um,
That's the father of.
of our current prime minister, yes,
Okay.
he basically said, we have no business in the bedrooms of our people, and so they passed that it was no longer considered a crime to be gay.
Okay.
Okay. And then the laws were changed and everything. And it was at that point that things started moving forward. I mean, the Canadian government, now, please don't quote me, I might get the date wrong, but it was, I think, 1985 where sexual orientation was actually added to our um, human rights list. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I've forgotten the name of it here. I'm not being a patriotic Canadian. You're forgetting the name of it. But nonetheless, I mean, even once it was in there, that didn't mean that we were safe. There was still a lot of, pushback. I mean, we're talking about the early 80s. And of course, you and I haven't even started to talk about AIDS and the situation around that. I mean,
So
God.
yeah. So okay, so I just want to. So Stonewall, what were the parallels? Parallels, I guess that's the right word,
Mhm.
between being gay in Canada compared to the United States. Did you notice a difference?
Um, well, I mean, as a gay man back then, I knew that San Francisco and New York were big gay havens. Um,
Okay.
and I knew that Toronto was as well, and Vancouver was as well. So those were places where you would hear the news of, what was going on. I mean, Stonewall. I mean, I was only 6 years old, so I don't remember that. But I do remember Harvey Milk being assassinated in the 70s in San Francisco. So there were bits and pieces, but again,
Well,
for Canada, it was not really any different. It was just basically a microcosm of what was going on in the States. So,
were were you surprised when he was assassinated?
well, I was rather young at the point. It wasn't until later when I actually started reading up on it in the 80s
Okay.
why it was such an important thing. I mean, he really is a person who stands out for gay rights.